Hi, and welcome back to the Mob Mentality Show. I'm Chris Lucian, and my co-host is Austin Chadwick. And today we have Martin Christensen here to talk a little bit about mobbing, product discovery, key adult development stuff for stronger collaboration, and possibly a little about transformation. But first, Martin, would you like to introduce yourself and get us going here?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. Nice that you want to have me here. I'm product model transformation coach from Stockholm, Sweden. Been agile coaching and been UX researching and designing, and been also actually teaching a lot in computer science in my life. So I'm pretty spread out, but it's a nice thing because in my job, I'm freelancing consultant. In my job, I can get everyone working together by talking all of their languages, basically. So
Nice. All
yeah,
right, collaboration.
very short me. Yeah,
All right.
yeah, collaboration is really key. That's why I'm here, I hope.
All
Nice,
right.
nice.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, maybe we can just jump into the topic of mobbing product discovery and we can meander from there.
Yeah, sure. Um, do we know what product discovery is? That's a
Uh,
good first question, right?
would you like, yeah, let's jump into that.
Yeah.
What is your definition of product discovery and go from there?
Yeah. My definition is to find a worthy problem that we're gonna find the best solution for. That is what we do in discovery. And doing that, we look at many aspects, but for me, the key three aspects we look at is if it's valuable for the business, if it's a great thing, valuable for the user, and if it's technically feasible, practically feasible. Do we have the teams that we need, and is it sustainable, basically? So that was maybe five things, but I said three. So it's a big chunk of things, but it's about finding out what's worthy to build, basically. Which means it's usually not something you do like a little bit on the side, or hopefully not getting anyone else to do for you, because then you are totally disconnected. So that's why the collaboration is key in this. Work
Yeah.
with it, and yeah.
So is that in a mob doing discovery, is that the process of bringing a end user into the mob with you, or what does it look like to do that from that perspective?
We've done it in a few different ways. I worked with a team once. I think we named it Mob Anything.
Hmm.
So maybe you can Google that, trademark Mob Anything, uh,
All right.
somewhere. And I think there's a blog post talking about how we worked as well, if I remember correctly, from one of the
Mhm.
team members. But
Okay.
we had like a couple of developers, three, I think, backenders, frontenders. We had some testers. We had some sort of product manager. We had a UX designer, and I was on the side a little bit helping them out as a coach. But what we did was that we mobbed anything and everything that we felt was reasonable to do together. So, for instance, planning a user interview, not doing a user interview, because that would be a cross-examination if you have a full team sitting in front of one person and asking them all sorts of stuff.
Sure.
So that we did split up and did one-on-one. And then when we came back, we analyzed the data and came to conclusions together. And most of the planning and the debriefings and stuff we did on a whiteboard, on the same whiteboard that we used for the mob programming later,
Nice.
basically. So that's the idea. So any any topic that's reasonable to do together that could benefit from the diversity that we get in a team, especially in a cross-functional team. We mob. And of course, some things are like running away to a meeting there, talking to a stakeholder, or running away over there and doing some research somewhere from a database or whatever it might be. So not everything is like, it's not full time
Yeah.
in the team.
Yeah, as you describe it, it reminds me of the like 1, 2, 4 all liberating structure.
Yeah.
Yeah, getting together.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe independent sources of information and then, discussing in smaller groups, getting it to bigger groups, and then getting everybody involved. So, I'm really a big fan of that style of coalescing information. And then another thing that you said is like the cross-examination issue. And I feel like that's what happens. So I've seen retrospectives that a team has, but there are the number of people representing each part of the retrospective is different. It's off. And so it's kind of unrelated, but it reminded me of the reason that we started doing like one person from each role retrospectives rather than but across
Right.
multiple teams so that the representation
Mm-hmm.
is equal, and then bringing that back into processes for either team. So those are, I think, great strategies and interesting path forward. Do you so in this process, I guess, is there anything that made you shift toward doing a mob style product discovery over what was being done before, or was like there a big, were there any discoveries or changes that occurred when you made this change, or is this just something that started happening?
Well, Woody was around at one point or so. He's everywhere, uh, basically. So, and I have actually not met him, which is kind of hilarious. But all of the people I worked with at the time had, and I was very read up on everything mob. So and really liked it because I usually run collaboration workshops that talk about other kinds of collaboration and trying to find what's the best kind for your context, etc. We can park that one and talk about that one a little bit later because that's something I'm very passionate about. But the team I was working with, the developers wanted to work closer together. So I suggested just let's try more programming. And then when the team grew from me being a UX designer slash coach, and I think 4 or 5 developers, when it grew to being more UX people and more product managers, etc., we realized that we could actually also mob design things or similar. So especially because in that team we had one guy who's really really good at like new design patterns in interaction design, and we had one woman who was really good at really understanding the users and could explain that to the rest, and I was pretty good at strategy, etc., etc. So by putting us together, we realized that we were faster in coming up with the better solutions than we were if we are going to sit siloed. So we were very inspired by looking at the people who were mob programming and just went, hey, let's try mob designing. So that's how it started for me, actually doing things. And then I personally haven't been working in a mob since then. So I have one experience basically, but then I've been coaching both developers and designers and managers and whatever in this. So I've sat next to the mob and seen them work in many different situations. But that's how it started for me.
Nice.
And yeah.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Tying back into what you were saying earlier, I think I had some follow-up questions, but maybe the first question I would have is just maybe some more detail about how you did the mob setup of a user. Did you say it was a user experience test or interview? I might have missed the word there.
No, we didn't do any interviews as a mob, but we did user interviewing,
User
planning for that.
user
So
interviewing. Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
So what you would do in what you would plan for when you're doing user interviews is that you need to have some sort of a semi-formal interview script or areas that you want to dig into, etc. If you're gonna get reasonable answers, comparable answers that you can draw conclusions from, you need to
Okay,
ask somewhat similar questions. So it's
gotcha.
normal that you would actually sit and do them together. But we did it more in the way of like whatever mob programming scheduling you have, like we switch every 10 minutes to actually take notes on the whiteboard and all of
Gotcha.
that,
Okay.
just to make sure that everyone was involved in the discussion, so that no one just moved away into
I
another
understand.
headspace.
Gotcha. Okay, so if I understood correctly, you set up these user interview questions as a mob, and then who conducted the, so to speak, user interviews?
We did in the team, and
Ah,
when we did the mob anything team that I had after this, I was coaching. Then it helped a little bit because a few of the developers had actually taken UX courses, UX training. So everyone
ah,
was out doing interviews. So
gotcha.
the PM took 5 people to interview, the UX person took 5 people to interview, the front ender took 5 people to interview, and by doing it like that, they could cover many people in a short period of time, basically by splitting
Ah,
up. And then
Yeah.
when they got together, um, there are different ways of doing it. The thing I've done mostly, I don't remember exactly how they did, but what I've done recently is that we've done like put all the good findings up um, on a wall and try to see the patterns, the themes of things. See if many people have the same um, basic needs or basic motivations. And to do that, you really need to discuss the things. So you can't do that alone
mm.
either. And you need a facilitator. So, like a mob programming session, basically, as well. Uh,
Gotcha.
I really like that idea. And it's funny because it reminds me of, I think, how I see a lot of mobs do technical research. So if there is a really kind of big, overwhelming technical hurdle coming up, sometimes mobs will split out into individuals and take different learning resources. And then when they get back together, they have a kind of a diversity of experience to pull from. And then that influences discussion among the group. And so you can cover a lot more research material at the same time. So
yeah,
it's interesting that I've seen that pattern occur that way, but the UX style of customer interviews has certainly been kind of like in the opposite end of the spectrum. So yeah, super cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, we did the same when designing later. So it was just one guy having the design tool up on his screen, and the rest of us sitting behind or next to, and then shifting around.
Fascinating. Yeah. It's funny, Chris, when you were talking about yours, it reminds me of how we did the intern interviews, which obviously is very different than like a user and experience interviews, but it was very similar in that we designed the interview, so to speak, which
Hmm.
was like basically a set of questions that were talked to each intern one-on-one, but also the interview process, which was itself a mobbing session, but then each person who was involved in mobbing to set up the intern interviews, then we're split out into different groups. So that's kind of similar to the UI UX thing, right? Where, they handled different users independently. And then we all came together to bring all the data together to make a decision. So it's kind of this very interesting fan in, fan out, mega mob, return to one mob kind of thing.
Yeah,
um,
it
pattern that I
it's a
see
pretty
between the two. Yeah.
I think I got the pattern from me. I think I got it from service design, which is very much done in that service design is very similar to user experience design. But what they really want to do is that they do more open interviews, and they do them on very much in the context of where people do things. So if it's a service that's going to be designed for railway station or something like that, train station, then they like go out 20 people and just conduct as many interviews they can in like 1 hour with so many people, and then they come back and they haven't really taken notes, but they've gotten the gist of it. Kind of, they have an idea, and then they see the themes together, basically. It's very good. It's very much collaboration, but you do it individually, which I like. So you use the power of like individual work in a very good way, so that the more you do it, the faster you do it, kind of the more iterations, etc. To an observer from the side, it looks like strong collaboration, basically.
Gotcha.
And the outcome is much better than you would get from just individual contributions.
Yeah. And for example, have you done, because I'm not very experienced with maybe this style of user interviews. Have you ever done it non-mob style? And what was that like?
Oh yeah. I was trained as a user researcher. So
Gotcha.
I've done that. I've done that a lot. And I mean, my biggest problem that I see of doing it just like that is that you are one person, or maybe just two, who are trying to understand the data you got from the interview. And you usually need to do a lot of pilot tests before. So because if you're just one or two persons setting up the test, you are bound to make mistakes. You're bound to have bugs, basically, in the test script. So it's very similar to the what do you call it? The benefits you get from mob programming. So and once I saw that, I can't close my eyes to
not be unseen, right? Yeah.
No,
Gotcha.
exactly.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Fascinating. Oh, I love it. Well, this might be a good tie-in to the next topic, which is key adult developmental
maybe
stuff.
not actually. Sorry,
What's
because
that?
I remembered another thing that I want to
please
say,
do.
that is
Jump
a
in.
really big benefit of doing the mob anything thing. One thing that we really get out of it is that if you have the developers actually meeting the users as well, and actually being a strong part of the whole discovery part by looking at things as strategy, understanding all the needs and what's not needs, and what the business wants, etc. You get so much fewer lines of code, so much less gold plating, and and even with the designers, fewer buttons and more concise interfaces, and
you get a better idea of what 80/20 rule the customer wants,
exactly,
right? And
that one doesn't apply because you only have the 20%.
What is the priority? What are the key pain points? So maybe gold plating stems a little bit from our desire to anticipate the needs when we don't really know the situation, right? So
exactly.
So additional context results in a reduction of wasteful development, possibly, right? Yeah, I like it. It's an interesting concept.
Yeah, because I think maybe that's kind of like a human thing, right? Like if I don't know, regarding code, products, or anything, like if a request is vague, one defense mechanism is to make 50 things just in case, I guessed wrong at what they wanted, just because like, well, here's one of these will, make you happy, hopefully, and so maybe these kind of grounding, anchoring experiences narrows the focus to, okay, this is what's needed here, you know.
Yeah, and you write all of these stubs of code that might be in the future.
I see. Yes. Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and
And
I guess it's there's, I don't know if it's a different school, but maybe it's just a different thing you do first. I've seen some teams where you basically just deliver and discover by delivering, right? Without doing
yeah,
interviews and that kind of thing.
yeah,
So I suspect you'll you'll uh you'll eventually discover, but in production, right? Where I think in this
yeah,
style, you're just having that discovery in a non-production environment, so to speak.
yeah, exactly. The problem with doing it in that direction, I'm all for that kind of way of thinking. Or what I usually do is I do a little bit of discovery to start with, and then we do continuous discovery and delivery at the same time, basically, and going back and forth. And some of the discoveries you get from the production code, some of the discoveries you get from somewhere else. And why I want to do that is because I've seen too many teams getting stuck in their ideas. So even if they get contradictive evidence for whatever they built, they still continue in that direction. It's like I usually take the example of how you aim an old cannon and try to hit the moving target. Then you really need to anticipate the move, and we know that we can't do that in a complex environment. And smarter smarter target who wants to go in another direction or whatever. So then in agile we have the concept of the homing missile, where you try to kind of uh, narrow in towards the goal. But my addition to that thinking is if you just aim in any direction, it will take some time for the homing missile to kind of turn around and then go in that direction. If it was very objective, but we aren't. We are subjective, all of us. So when we've started building something or designing something or thinking something in that direction, it's very, very hard. All of our biases kick in and stops us from turning around. So we will build shit in the end. Anyway, there. So that's why I see it's good to start with discovery, and then when you know, like approximately that direction, then you can go discovery, delivery, discovery, whatever.
Right. Yeah, you don't want to get caught in the sunk cost fallacy, and you don't want to get
Exactly.
caught in yeah, just building something, because one pitfall I can see is just building something that anchors your customers, and then your customers just expect it to work that way from then on when they need
Yeah,
something completely different but never told you, right?
very, very common.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I like what you
especially
said
in
about
business to business.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
good. Yeah, and I like what you said about both. And I wonder if there's some, I haven't really done both, at least recently that I can think of. I mean, at least maybe I have, but it seems like you can kind of do both, right? Because it's kind of like, let's say you design user interviews as a mob. It's not like they're going to happen now, right? You got to schedule those, I would suspect, and it takes a little
Yeah,
bit of time to get them situated, right? And
yeah,
so maybe while that's getting set up, you can be building your pipeline and, you
yeah,
know, and so it's not necessarily A or B. It's just kind of like A and B. Let's do them. You know what I mean? In whatever order makes
yeah.
sense as we go.
And then the great thing by having a mob is that when you've gotten the evidence back that you're building in the wrong direction,
Hmm.
you have the whole, as Kent Beck says, you have the whole team to support your courageous decision to throw things away
Yeah.
and take another
Yeah,
direction.
it's incredibly important for a software team or as any product development team to be able to say, we should throw this away, or we should stop doing X or whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
And so like one retrospective that I've recommended at times in the past is just a stop doing retro. Like a lot of people do
Yeah.
start, stop, continue, but rarely do people just say start, the stop doing retro, because a lot of start or continue items get voted up and then the action items get created around that. So it's just like if we're going to stop doing anything, we need to collapse the amount of time that we're spending on something,
Yeah.
or whatever. That's important. But also, a lot of this discussion is reminding me of the examples of the Lean UX book and the Lean Startup book, right? So Lean UX for like paper prototyping, and then the Lean Startup for things like white glove treatment of a customer, and saying it's not automated. We're doing it manually in the background, but if we prove that this is actually what you need, then maybe we can actually build the thing that does automate it. A lot of those things are bubbling around in my head right
Yes.
now.
Exactly. No, that's exactly how I usually try to make the teams I work with work.
hmm
Then there are all of these political things and stuff that stops you from doing that
So talk more
as
about
well.
that. Like what political things come up that stop you from doing that?
If we're going to go into the topic that Austin talked about before here,
Yeah.
around adult developmental stuff,
Yeah.
uh, there's this, I don't know if you know about it, but there's all of this psychological research on um, uh, aspects that we need to take into consideration when doing something new, when doing a transition or a transformation or a general change. And let's say we have a team who wants to start mob programming or mob anything or whatever you want to do. Then, firstly, they all need to have a similar mindset, a similar motivation for doing this. And I know you spoke with my old colleague, Richard Westman, and the
Yes.
team that I helped him set up. I know he told you that we interviewed them and made sure that they had that mindset to start with. They wanted to collaborate, basically. It was important for them to be able to do the most effective and valuable thing and doing it together, basically. So, okay, check mindset. And then we probably need the skills, the practical skills of doing it, all of that, those kinds of things. And this is probably what you talked about, or I know that we talked a lot about that in your podcast. So let's just jump over that one. Another thing is that you need to have good relationships in the team. You need to have trust. You need to understand where you can collaborate and where you can't collaborate, and all of those. And those are also intangible things. But if we look at those kinds of things, but the tangible ones is how are you organized? How are you set up? How are you rewarded? For instance, individual contributions, or how would managers rate you if they see you were only sitting eight people in front of a computer, etc. And especially these days, how do you actually mob programming in an activity-based office or similar things? So all of those four aspects, the inside of your head, the relationships between you, the actual practical skills that you have in your team, and then all of those things around you that influences you. Those are the things I'm talking about, and some of those are political, right? So
Yeah.
long story coming to
Yes.
those
Yeah.
political, as in of course we should all work solo because that's most efficient, etc., etc.
Right. Right. Yeah, and I think even just organizational boundaries. I know that, I've worked in a number of different environments, and interacting with customers directly has been either, you know, even that aspect of it, whether you're mobbing it or not, a developer talking to a customer directly has had various levels of acceptance during my career. And so certainly you would want to have that sort of thing align as well. Um, yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, as far as developmental stuff for stronger collaboration, what else comes to mind there?
The how this connects to that is okay. I'll jump back a little bit. We most people know, or at least if they took a psychology course in high school or whenever you have it, you know that kids are developing developmental stages in children, and if you're a parent, you definitely see them
Sure.
when they go through different stages, and this is very very old research, but they go through stages that we can predict very well, and basically say most kids at around year 2 shifts over and get a more complex worldview. You can't do the peekaboo thing with them anymore. They understand that the objects behind the hands are still there. Kind of. That's year 2 development for a kid. Year 7 or 8 somewhere, you start getting the what's that called in English? You start understanding consequences of the action you do.
Sure.
For instance, and then you have a bunch of those stages, and they are very well researched. And then you think that you are grown up, but
Yeah.
there are more stages, and this is adult developmental theory or psychology. And those stages, they don't just happen at year 25, you go this, and year 35, you do this. So it needs, you need to work on them, or you need to experience things in your life that help you go through them. So one very common thing is when most people get children, they realize they're not in the center anymore. They need to take care of other people. So their brains have to develop past the egocentricity of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So most people manage to do that transition. Some people don't. But so there are those stages, and they tie in very well to how well we are able to keep relationships, keep complexity in our heads. So if we're going to do a mob session with a bunch of other people, 5-6 other people, we need to have 5-6 other people like talking to them. We need to see them. We need to understand that they exist. We need to be able to listen to them if they start doing something like that when someone writes a bug or whatever they do. And for some people who haven't, as we usually say in psychology, leveled up to that complexity level, mob programming is impossible.
Right.
So finding the right tool or method or situation for the right for that person, basically, is important. So some people can't do these things. So just this, I've seen people, developers doing mob programming very well. And then we said, let's mob anything. And that's too much. They can't really handle that. And you have of course also seen a lot of people who can't handle mob programming. And sometimes we blame it on some kind of introvert extrovert scale. And that might be true as well. That's another aspect of it.
Yeah. So that is fascinating. I mean, I think my mind's going several different directions, but maybe I'll pry deeper into why do you think they were fine mobbing on code development stuff, but then when it became mob something else, it was too much. Like what's going on there? Yeah.
You add like another axis of complexity.
Okay.
So they've done the x-axis and the y-axis, and now we add this z-axis 3D version, and they go basically. and the fun part is that if they realize if they have a very good connection to their team, I've seen this in one of the teams at Swedish television where Rikard also worked, but it wasn't his team. But it was a team who they didn't actually mob program, but they were collaborating very much strongly in other ways. And they realized they had to switch over their whole way of working from doing, they did a kids app on the iPad, and they did just a tie-in to one of the kids shows, simple video interface. And then they had this innovation thing going on, which they do at Swedish television. So they came up with, let's do a pop balloons small PHP game, I think it was, something like that. And that became a super hit with the kids. And at some stage there, they realized, oh shit, we need to make games. We need to make some kind of thing to do this with the kids. And most of them were really connected to their team. And even if they had never done any game programming or anything like that before, so they basically went from PHP programmers to become Unity programmers. So they switched, and that's a quite big leap to take. But they did that and added that level of complexity. I think this is my observation of it, because they had such strong connection and were a happy team to start with. So they would have been left out and had a trauma basically if they wouldn't have done that move. So their brains had to develop and add that kind of complexity.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I think I think maybe it's what you're saying, but correct me if I'm wrong. It almost sounds like to expose my huge amount of things I don't know, I need to be comfortable with my team, right? So like when you talked about adding that access of things I don't know, I'm happy to venture into that realm as part of a mob if my relationships within the team are good enough such that I'm okay to be like, I don't know anything about this and I really need help.
It doesn't have to be like that, but it's a pattern I've seen, yes.
Okay, gotcha.
So it can be something else that motivates you.
Gotcha, I see. But you basically need a catalyst to jump into the big unknown in front of others.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I might be willing to do it alone, possibly, but there's that social factor. And so making that safe or providing that catalyst. And I think
or you
go ahead,
or you get left behind. And that would be traumatic in some sense, which could also force you to develop, because all of a sudden your brain realizes, oh shit, this is an area that I'm not comfortable in. I need to change something. And it will do that.
Yeah, gotcha.
So that's how you level up, basically. There was some person I listened to once who said that if you haven't gone through a bunch of things that you could label as a trauma, you haven't leveled up.
As a what was the last thing?
You haven't leveled up if you haven't gone through a bunch of things that you can label as traumas.
Oh, trauma. Gotcha. Yeah.
Traumas. Exactly.
No pain, no gain.
Yes, exactly.
Well, maybe this would be a good time to transition to a little bit on transformation before we have to wrap it up.
Well, this is transformation, right? Yeah. So we're already into this. So what I'm trying to do, I'm not trying to put people in bad situations just so that they can level up at all. But it helps knowing this. It helps understanding that you might not be the best you can be.
Yeah. So It's not good to say, welcome to the team. It's time for a little light trauma to get started.
No, hopefully not.
Yeah.
But if you like that, that also helps. If you have a strong group, if you
Hmm.
have a strong team, you have the support of others, so you
Hmm.
can dare do things differently. Uh, and you might even be able to roll back because it's the whole team if something goes wrong,
Yeah.
etc.
Is
Or
it?
throw away whatever idea you had. So yeah.
I'm kind of fascinated with this the idea of trauma because on one hand I see like throughout my career I've had what I would consider traumatic experiences with like coworkers and other things like that. Namely in one of my earlier roles, uh, there was somebody that more or less turned against me while we were working together over time. They were good friends at the beginning and like quote unquote work enemies toward the end. And I learned a
Mm,
lot about what I thought good teamwork looks like, and
mm.
that has influenced how I operate today and part of my initial experiences with mobbing. And so you could say I leveled up from that experience and then
You
came
definitely did,
into another
yes.
one. And right. Where I also see mobbing be a very safe environment. And I still feel like I see people leveling up, even though it feels safe in those scenarios. And so I think the only thing that I can, really back that into is that the safety net of things like being able to fail fast and fail often, but fail small, allows
Hmm.
for these like, very micro experiences to bring you forward. But and I've also seen scenarios where learning theft was a thing where there was a term brought
Yeah.
up where it was like, hey, you did that thing, I didn't get to learn from that experience, so it was like robbing
Hmm.
somebody of the trauma. And so yeah, it's just interesting to me because I think what you're saying is that um because you have a trauma and you leveled up from it doesn't mean that trauma needs to be something particularly painful. Is that true, would you say?
No,
Or
my I don't know exactly what the psychology research to say about that today, but what I've heard before is like what I said before, that you almost always need some kind of traumatic experience to level up. But I when you phrase it like this, I totally reject that thought. You you should really be, yeah, I think you level up if you have the right safety net around you as well, as long as the team together does something outside of their comfort zone.
Hmm. Yeah.
right, yeah. So this idea that if you had a mob, but the mob was working on the same thing all the time and had was not perhaps learning something new to accomplish what they're trying to do, then there's no chance at trauma, and so you live within an echo chamber of stagnation or something. Is
Yeah,
that
but
what you're?
that's what you usually strive for. The more logic part of your brain is
Mhm.
always trying to remain the status quo, right? So
Mm.
so
Yeah.
everyone who reject more programming, usually the people I met at least usually do it like, no, I have better flow as a solo programmer. I'm more efficient, or whatever, all those.
Mhm.
And I mean, those are defense mechanisms.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, we are coming up on time, so I'll share one
Yeah,
thought here
sorry.
and then I'll kick it to you for final thoughts and final plug-in. But it took me a while to realize it, but this is a concept we've kind of we've talked about before, but it's related. And the way I named it before was the coaching paradox, which is like when coaching, when to make it easy, when to let it be hard. How can these opposing things work together, kind of thing, right? And I think what I've noticed is sometimes a traumatic experience is required. But what I've also noticed too is that a mob, so a traumatic experience could be like the analogy of jumping into the deep end of a pool and learning, from that experience.
Mm.
what I feel like a mob is in its various forms, whether technical or not, um, is it's kind of like a way to wade into the deep end and learn the same lessons. Maybe you don't learn them the same, but I feel like they still get learned in a safer, less satire like spike of trauma. But it's like little bits of trauma, but you learn them together, and the safety of the mob, making it safe as you learn. I don't know. That's kind of my where my mind goes. But what
Yeah,
what are
I
your
like
final
that.
thoughts on this topic, and anything to share or plug before we close?
No, I like that thought. I think doing things together will always be kind of superior to doing things alone. So
Yeah,
just because of that, because you have your safety net and so on.
yeah.
So I really like that. I hadn't really planned a plug, but when you told me that there was going to be a possible plug, I written a book
Oh, cool.
called
Awesome.
Holistic Product Discovery, which talks a little bit about collaboration on a higher level, but not actually mob anything or something like that. But that might be the next book I write.
Awesome.
Cool. Fantastic. What a great title. Yeah, that's a lot of what we've been talking about today. So fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. We'll definitely include that in the show notes. And we
Nice.
are at time. So thank you so much, Martin, for joining us in this conversation. It was quite stimulating. I quite learned a lot. I felt safe while doing it, even though there was a little bit of trauma, oh man, Martin's saying something I don't quite understand. So
And
good
that's
kind of
because I'm
trauma.
Swedish. Just
Yeah, yeah. No, no, it's all been fantastic, and so we really appreciate you coming on the show to share with us, share your experiences, share your thoughts, and so big thanks to you, and then big thanks to our audience. Please like and subscribe. Please share this episode with others to kind of inspire similar conversations on holistic product discovery, mob product discovery, adult developmental stuff for stronger collaboration and transformation. And yeah, please reach out to us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, and more. And we love to hear your thoughts on these topics. And until next time, mob on everyone and have a good one. See ya.
Bye, everyone.
thank you.